PatZi with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper, a program for writers and those who dream of writing, and for everyone who wants to know the story behind the book. And I have some great stories for you today from JOANNE Harris, the author of Chocolat, and she has a wonderful new book, Vianne. And I'm so happy to welcome you, Joanne.
It's great to be here, Patsy. Thank you for inviting me.
This is a thrill for so many reasons. The wonderful thing is, I have been a fan of yours forever since Chocolat came out, and one of the fascinating things is that I am a chocolatier.
Ah,
Yes, so I consider you a great promoter for chocolate. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to tell you, oh, man, it's so great. It's so great. And this is a sensational return to the world of chocolate. And you're going to tell us all about it. And I just want to remind people one of the great things about, of course, the book became a bestseller, Chocolat, because it's just a great book. And I want to remind people of the cover. This is the first cover that I saw of the book. And I love this cover. Isn't it beautiful?
it's really nice. It's not the first cover, but it's the one that I like best.
It's funny. It's the one I like best too. I know there's other covers and I have other versions, but I just it's it's France. It's everything in that little cover, isn't it?
Yes, it's very evocative, I think. But
Very
it was a long
evocative.
time ago. It was, over 27 years ago now.
I know.
It seems
I
like
know.
less.
I know it's hard to believe this is so long ago, but the beautiful thing about it is you this is what happens with characters. You have a great character in your head. Uh, they don't leave you.
No, that's right. She's never left me. I've written four more books about her, and she and I have had adventures in motherhood and have seen life together and traveled the world together. And although she is very different from me in many ways, I think we've got more similar as the years have gone on.
Do you remember the moment that you first thought of her? It's such an exciting feeling. You create something from nothing, although it's all somewhere in your background.
Yeah, I'm not sure I think of it as that way, really. I think that I see Vianne as somebody that I met, was interested in, wanted to know more about, and who little by little has revealed herself to me in different ways and has confided in me and has shared her experiences. But I don't feel as if I'm in control at all. I feel as if I'm traveling alongside her, watching what she's doing.
It's exciting for an author to get to that point where the character is so real. You were born in Yorkshire. People don't who have never been up to Yorkshire do not know how magical that area is.
It is. It's very. I'm. I live something like 12 miles from Wuthering Heights, and so I live in a rural part of Yorkshire near the moors. In fact, I have a house in a wood.
All of your books about Vienne, there is that magical quality, and so much of it I think comes from Yorkshire because walking in the forest, you do believe in some kind of magic.
I think it's easy to believe in magic when you live in a place like this, but I think also it is easy to find magic everywhere you are. It doesn't have to be in a rural setting, it can be in an urban setting. In fact, Vianne is all about magic in an urban setting. There's a rich tradition of folklore and mythology and legend in Yorkshire, but as there is everywhere, of course. And I think the more you learn about a place, the more these things comes out and reveal themselves to you.
I moved to England, but when I first went to Yorkshire, I stopped and asked for directions to Keighley and Hayworth.
Mhm.
Little did I know that is not how people pronounce it.
Most things are pronounced differently to the way they're spelt around here. I think it's a way of making sure that people really want to go there, making them work a little. So Keithley and Haworth, I'm assuming you mean there.
Yes, of course.
It is very different, and I think distances are slightly different here too. What seems to be a short distance on the map is actually a terribly long way with lots of little twists and turns.
So lovely to drive there. All these little roads and everything was so relaxed and high hedges, green.
It's still pretty much like that, actually.
You created this really trip back in time for Vianne.
I think it was more difficult than I thought it was going to be, because for the last 27 years I have been writing about Vianne Rocher as she grows older, as her relationship with her child changes, as her relationship with the world and others changes, as she gains experience. And of course, I had to strip all this away with Vianne. I had to try to get back to a 21-year-old version of Vianne 6 years before Chocolat begins. She is only in the very earliest stages of her pregnancy with Anouk, who is going to become so important in her life, but she isn't yet a mother. She doesn't know the first thing about chocolate. She can't cook. All the things we associate with her in Chocolat are still to happen. And so I had to try to get down to a voice that was younger, perhaps less socially adept, more raw.
You had not really told us a lot about her past. We didn't know about her mother.
We don't know very much about Vianne's past because she doesn't know very much about her past. And although her mother has been her best friend, has traveled with her all her life, is her primary relationship in the world, she doesn't know very much about her either. And so I wanted to extrapolate some of her childhood experiences with her mother to explore this strange relationship that they have. Because this is a book that's all about motherhood in different ways, I wanted to tease out a little bit of that relationship and to explain a little of why Vianne is as she is, why she has never settled down, why she has this need to keep moving and this fear of making connections, this fear of being tied down.
When she gets to Marseille, she's an outsider. Where did you get this feeling about being an outsider? Did you ever feel like an outsider?
I think if you're from two cultures, as I am, you're always at least 50% a foreigner, or 100% a foreigner, but you're never 100% somebody who belongs in one specific place. And Vianne is a little like this. Vianne is ethnically different. She is culturally different. She is a world traveler. She hasn't had a home. She's never had a place where she and her mother have stayed more than a few weeks at a time. So she doesn't have any people. And now that she's lost her mother and scattered her ashes in the Hudson River in New York and moved on, she doesn't have anyone at all but this unborn child and this fear that she is not going to know how to care for it. And so I wanted her right from the start to be an outsider in Marseille. She's a stranger to this huge, complicated city. She is a migrant, she's an illegal immigrant, she's a stranger. And the challenge is to find a life, to find a place to stay, to find skills, to acquire contacts that will enable her to build a life of her own.
Did you deliberately select 4th of July as an Independence Day for her?
Yes, I
Independence from
think so. I
America?
thought it would be an interesting thematic point there. She is suddenly coming into her independence, whether she wants it or not. She has lost her mother, who has been the main touchstone in her life, and she's grieving. But she also has new choices, and she has the choice of living as her mother has taught her or going her own way. And the whole of this book is about the choices that she makes and the price attached to each choice that she makes.
You built that mystery up. You created this background for her mother that we don't really know why she's so secretive, what was going on in her past, and why they were constantly on the road.
I do hope so. I think Vianne is a bit of a mystery, both to the reader who's followed her into the Vianne that she is at the end of The Strawberry Thief, a mature woman whose children have left home, but where she came from, who she was before that, how she became the Vianne we know, has always been a bit of a mystery. And I wanted to answer some of those unanswered questions. Not all of them, because even Vianne doesn't know the answer to all of them, but at least to shed some light on the evolution of that character and why she has always been such a solitary person.
In those days, when you were an illegal immigrant to France, it wasn't as easy as it is today. I,
It's just as bad, if not worse. Yes, but I think that this is a conversation that we're still having, and I thought it would be interesting to introduce modern themes into what's effectively a period piece set in the 90s, because we can see the evolution of the French attitude to immigration and to individuals from other countries, and the increasing wave of populism and hostility towards strangers. And this is something that Vianne has always had, and it's a challenge that she has everywhere she goes. She has to try to integrate, she has to try to charm little groups of people who perhaps are very set in their ways, like the man that she befriends in the old quarter of Montmartre and in Marseille. And she has to be accepted by those people.
Let's talk about Guy and Mahmed. I thought that they're great characters, and being an illegal in the country, particularly in France, people don't realize in the 70s and 80s, people still had to have those little health cards that we had to show that we were vaccinated. There's this aspect of always in the back of your mind when you're working in another country. Are your papers in order?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, and of course her papers are all false. Her name is not her name. She's traveled under a series of different names, and when she arrives in Marseille, she chooses another name to suit herself, one that's not quite the same as the one she's been traveling under. And there's a reason for this, and we go into this. We go into why she is Vianne and what that name means to her. But yes, first of all, she gets herself a job in a bistrot in the old part of the city, a bistrot run by a man called Louis Martin, who is a widower, who is set in his ways, who is elderly, who is quite grumpy, who has a handful of friends who come to his bistrot every day for lunch, which he cooks. And they're all men of a certain age, very like him, people who are resistant to change, resistant to strangers. And the first thing Vianne has to do is to find her place among these people, to talk her way into a job, to fit into this community, to be a member of it. And then, of course, she befriends, as you said, Guy and Mahmed, who are two rogue chocolatiers, and they are trying, against all odds, to open a boutique chocolaterie in the old quarter, in an old-fashioned, unfashionable part of Marseille. And of course, Louis and his friends don't think it's going to work, because that kind of chic outfit is for tourists, not for locals. So they too are outsiders in their way.
Mention the fun little challenge she's given when she's asked to cook. And I love that because that's probably one of the most difficult things that you can be asked to cook.
If you're in Marseille, you're supposed to know how to cook bouillabaisse, and Louis assumes, or pretends to assume, that is going to be an easy test of skill, because everybody in Marseille understands how to cook bouillabaisse. But Vianne has never cooked it. She doesn't know what it is. She doesn't know what any of the fish look like. She hasn't ever used a proper kitchen with utensils because she's never had one. And so it ends up being a bit of a trial of strength.
I love that challenge. Did your mother make bouillabaisse?
No, my mother doesn't make it. She's not from Marseille. She is from Brittany, and so she makes Breton fish stews and this kind of thing. But French cooking tends to be quite heavily regionalized, and there's this general feeling that if you don't eat it in the place that it's supposed to be eaten, then it probably won't be any good.
And they're probably right. Guy and Mahmed have this dream of sharing their love of chocolate, which is funny because that's what I did. And this is before the book. I moved to England and I did open a chocolate factory and I sold my chocolates in Harrods. You might have eaten my chocolates.
I may well have done.
You may well have done. I was making actually healthy chocolate, what I like to call healthy, although of course it had too much sugar if you look back on it. But it was all fresh fruit and nuts dipped in chocolate. So
Yes.
it was, I like to say it was better for you because if you have a little nut protein and you mix it with chocolate, dark chocolate, it's healthy for you. So tell us about these two guys and how they got together and their passion. Where'd their passion come from?
Guy is the son of a family of lawyers who expect him to be a lawyer. In fact, he's been to university in Marseille to study law, but he's dropped out and has ended up being a chef and has discovered his passion for chocolate. And it's really his dream. He is very knowledgeable about chocolate, about the history of chocolate, the folklore of chocolate. And he's just fascinated by all the possibilities that chocolate offers. Mehmed is less interested in chocolate, but he understands Guy's passion. And he is also better with money than Guy is, because Guy is just, he's a poet, he's an artist, he's a romantic. He's not really thinking about counting the pennies, whereas Mehmed, who has always had to be careful with money, is constantly looking at their finances and worrying. And so one of them creates, the other one worries, and together they make this unbreakable unit.
When she gets involved, she adds an extra spirit, I would say, to the process.
She is initially drawn to them because of their enthusiasm, not because she likes chocolate, because actually at this time, Vianne doesn't know anything about chocolate. She's scarcely ever even tasted it, because the kind of chocolate that they make is expensive, it's a luxury, it is the kind of thing that her mother would never have bought. And so she first tastes their chocolate, and it's dark, free trade, artisanal chocolate, and she doesn't like it. It's bitter, it's unpleasant, she is not attracted to it. But she is attracted to the passion of these two men and their dream. And eventually she learns more and more about chocolate, about the process, which seems almost magical to her, this transformation of beans and this multiplicity of processes that the beans go through before becoming a final product. And she becomes fascinated by that. And eventually she's drawn into their little community, and it becomes a community of three.
I think we've all been fascinated for years with the book, with Chocolat, and of course, in the film. But with Vianne, I think it's a great to have this backstory. I love backstories in general. And so you've created something that I know is, of course, it's going to be a bestseller, probably a movie again. Actually, have they talked to you about doing a whole streaming series where they start at the beginning with this one and then go through?
Yeah, I've had a number of talks with Disney about this, and Vianne has been optioned. So it could happen. It could, I see it more as an episodic show than as a movie.
Yeah, I do
But
too.
I think movies have their own rhythms and they have their own shape, and the stories that I write tend to be more episodic, and that would allow for the minor characters to come into their own. But I'm happy to see how it goes, because these things are very, it's very often a question of what individuals are involved in the production and how they see it. So I'd be interested to see what vision somebody else can bring to this story.
It would make a wonderful streaming series, starting with Vianne and going through both Lollipop Shoes and Strawberry Thief. There's so much material, and people will love to watch it week after week. There's so much human interest in all of the stories, of course, that Vianne tells people. There's so many stories and so many, as you said, minor characters that can be major characters that can carry through. It would be so nice. I am so tired of slasher streaming series, these horrible, endless murders, famous
Mm.
murders. I want something nice and fun to watch, and this would be beautiful.
I'd love to see it. And it's always nice to see stories go into different media, because different media have their own way of telling stories. And so you find new things, new facets will emerge to suit the medium. But I think it's good that this is a possibility. And if it's not, and people don't know Chocolat and don't know the other books, then this is a good way of entering that world. Because sometimes I think when you write a book with many sequels, it becomes less and less easy for people to venture into that world, because they think, how many books do I have to read before I can get into it? Whereas with this, you can just, it's a clean entry point into the world of Vianne for people who don't know her. And for people who do, it expands the world they already know and expands her backstory and makes her more interesting. But I think that after all these years, the fact that people are still so invested in this character and so willing to follow her where she goes next or wherever she's been, I think that's a wonderfully touching thing, and it makes me very happy.
Just following life has been interesting. Wow. When you were a teacher, did you ever expect to one day sell 1 million books, let alone I don't know how many million now?
No, when I was a teacher, I wrote and I had books published, but they were not particularly successful. And I thought, this is fine. It can be my indulgence, it's my sideline, but I'm not going to quit teaching for that. And then something happened, and one of my books was suddenly unexpectedly popular, and I had to leave teaching because it was no longer possible for me to sustain doing two jobs simultaneously. But no, I think I didn't expect it, and I don't think anybody else did either. It was not the kind of book that was perceived to be commercially attractive at the time. It wasn't fashionable to be writing that kind of story. But I think it was maybe different enough for the readers to be intrigued.
There's a limit to how many thrillers you can see. And yet, when Chocolat came out, it was like, whoa, this is so nice.
I think it was different. I think it was different enough, I think, to be arresting. And I think at the time, if I look at what was particularly fashionable at the time, there was a fashion for quite bleak, sparse writing about very realistic political issues and social issues. And I think there was quite a lot of that. And maybe people were just wanting something a bit new and a bit different, and something packed with sensuality and food and tastes and scents.
Something sweet.
Exactly.
And you provided it with Chocolat. And I think we're in the mood for it again. It's like a breath of fresh air in a way. Well, breath of the smell of chocolate, which is something even better.
I do hope so. Yeah, I think we need some relief sometimes from the
Yes.
world and also from the darkness of some stories. I have to say, I'm not averse to a dark story, but I think we need both. We need to have one to be able to appreciate the other.
And of course, with you being in Yorkshire and working, I know, in a shed, which is fun because I also had a shed in my garden in Berkshire, but I had a very old cottage and a lovely garden where I grew 36 varieties of roses.
Oh,
So,
that
and
sounds
at the end
lovely.
of the garden, at the far end of the garden, almost hidden by vines and trees, was this little shed with one wall was all glass, looking out into the garden, and that's where I'd work. And
That
it
sounds
was just
absolutely divine.
it's magical to do something like that.
If you like roses, you need to know that this year at the Chelsea Flower Show, I got a rose named after
No,
Vianne. Yes, a beautiful red scented rose, which is called Vianne's Chocolat. And Blue Diamond Nurseries brought it out this year. And I went round a few garden centres and did some talks, and surrounded by roses, of course. And it was just the most wonderful thing.
I live now in Texas, and I can't grow roses here.
Texas is a bit tricky for roses. Need a
Sure.
bit more rain than I think you've got in Texas, but if you look at my website, there are pictures of my rose on there, and it smells absolutely gorgeous.
Wow. To me, that's better than an Academy Award to have a rose. That's fantastic.
Yes,
Wow.
it's much better than an Academy Award, I think.
Oh, it's been so many years since I've been to the Chelsea show, and I love it. I love it.
It was great fun.
Oh, yeah. A great honor, really a great honor. So
It really was, yes.
it's almost like in Mrs. Miniver in the movie, they have her rose named after her. Uh,
Precisely.
yeah, isn't it? Now, of course, you don't speak with a Yorkshire accent, particularly.
No, I don't. French was my first language, and I don't really catch accents.
Did your dad have a Yorkshire accent?
No, he didn't. He was born in Oxfordshire.
Ah,
And my mother didn't speak English the first few years of my life, and so French was my first language, and it was the language I spoke at home. So I had a French accent when I went to school, which I lost quite rapidly, but this is why I don't sound quite like the other locals.
so of the Bronte girls, which their books is your favorite?
I think I'm an Emily person, much as I enjoy the books of the others too, but particularly Emily. I
And
think
did you used to wander around that area?
oh yeah, people go to Haworth all the time. It can be quite busy because it's quite populous, especially in summer. But it's beautiful. It's still very beautiful. The moors around it are untouched, and you can walk up to Top Withens and see Wuthering Heights as the Bronte sisters would have seen it.
Oh, I did that many times. So, Wuthering Heights is your favorite.
Yes,
Of
it is.
Charlotte's books, which do you like?
Oh, Charlotte, I think it still has to be Jane Eyre. She's very interesting. I think I think Villette is interesting too, for different reasons. I think it is a very personal study of her feelings, and but yeah, I think I was brought up on Jane Eyre.
And what about Shirley? Did you read Shirley?
I did read Shirley, yes. I thought it was interesting because it felt less personal. It felt more as if she'd stepped back and she was trying to write a more dispassionate novel.
So many of her ideas are so, well, what we'd call modern. So
Oh, yes.
very much ideas about women being independent, women running businesses. So right there, I think of Vianne making their own money. It was Jane Austen's books that brought me to England. When I was young,
Really.
I was 11 years old when I first read Jane Austen, and I started saving my money. And by the time I was 21, I had $25,000, and I moved to England and bought a cottage for
Wow.
$25,000. Today, that cottage is worth probably
Ah, well,
$300,000.
I
But
imagine it probably is.
but once I got there, it wasn't by that point. It wasn't Jane Austen's books that were influencing me. It was Jane Eyre. I
Mm.
love that, and also Shirley because very much there she talked about owning your own business, making your
Oh,
money,
yes.
and I had already been making my money, and I was going to
Mm.
make more.
I think it was a very brave thing to move at such an early age, but it must have been very rewarding.
For me, with those years, my British years were fantastic. I loved it. It was really, for me, it was magical. And if I was going back to anywhere in Europe, the only place I really want to go is Edinburgh and to Yorkshire. I've seen every place else, traveled everywhere else, but that's where I would like to go back one more time.
If you do make it back to Yorkshire, come and see me and I will show you my rose garden.
I
And I'll
will.
show you my Vianne rose, which by then will have made a nice little hedge too among all the others.
You never know. I might. Oh. As a result of your book, you've gotten to do a lot of traveling. Where have you gone with the? I'm sure you're invited many places, and over the years, you've done a lot of traveling because of your book.
I have. I've been to so many places that I would never have got the opportunity to go to without these books. I've been all over America. I've been to Australia, to New Zealand, all over Europe, to China. I've had various adventures. I've been down the Congo River in a canoe. I've been to Hawaii. I've been to Alaska. I've been to Antarctica. It's funny how this job, which everybody assumes is just sitting in a shed writing books, tends to catapult you all over the world.
That's one of the joys of being a writer, that it does open so many doors to you. And yeah, most people think it's that solitary thing. You're always sitting around by yourself. But once you get out there and once you embrace it, the promotion side, the marketing side, it's really a reaching out to people side. That's what's important. Talking to the
That's right.
people who've
Yes.
read your books.
Yeah, exactly. I think not everybody gets to do this. Obviously, I didn't do it with my other books before Chocolat, but it's very interesting going to different countries, talking about books, and looking at the slightly different takes that all countries have, the cultural differences that there are, but also the things that we have in common, the things that people connect with, gravitate to. And the things that we all have in common, one of which, of course, is food, which can mean all kinds of things emotionally, culturally, in terms of the community, the family, finding out what it means to people to cook a meal, to remember a recipe from somebody who may have passed, but whose food still exists and can bring them back.
Historically, I don't think the Chinese had a relationship with chocolate, but
Really not, no.
no. But how did they react to you when you came there? Of course, they'd seen the movie, they read the book.
There is a great deal of curiosity and interest. And I think that although maybe chocolate isn't such a large part of their culture, they do understand community and family and what food means to family and community. And they are interested in the characters. And I think that it's in the nature of everybody to read a book in a way that's filtered and perceived through the lens of their own culture. So it's very interesting to me that somebody in China or Japan can say, ah, yes, I read your book, and this character reminded me exactly of my mother in law or my father, somebody in my family, when you know that very likely there isn't necessarily a lot of crossover. There is, in certainly in human nature, if not in culture or in cuisine.
Exactly. Now, on the Amazon, now this is exciting. I've always wanted to do that, but
Oh, yes,
I like it.
absolutely. It was very interesting. It's a long story, but I gave the proceeds of my 3 cookbooks to Doctors Without Borders, and they put the money into a Congolese sleeping sickness program, and I went there to report on what they were doing and to write a piece. And I ended up staying there rather longer than I'd expected because we got stuck between lines in the war zone, but it was a real adventure and lots of stories came out of it, and I wrote about it later. And all of this was basically writing a little book about chocolate and then writing some recipes and having them published in some books. But it's these things can catalyze all kinds of things. You've no idea how far a story is going to take you when you're writing it, how far it's going to run.
And how much fun it can be.
Absolutely. And
The
how
fun.
wonderful, what a privilege it is just to meet people all around the world and to find things in common with people and to realize that your words have connected with them in some way.
And sharing the joy
Yes.
of what you put on paper and of your characters.
Yes, as I was saying, it's profoundly touching to see how those characters have resonated and people have wanted to know more about them, and how Vianne has just become friends with so many people all over the world.
It's beautiful. That's the whole idea of sharing, telling stories, and bringing people together. And I think that's why I know for sure that a streaming series will be terrific because people will enjoy it. And it is a way to, it's something nice to talk about. I can always talk to people about chocolate. Yeah, the minute you start talking to people about chocolate, they all have something to comment about.
Of
So,
course, there's so much history there, so much folklore, so much to talk about.
how did you get first published? So you had written a couple of books. So at which point did you get published the first time?
My first book was called The Evil Seed. I got published partly because I was persistent enough to talk an agent into signing me up, and then he got me published a couple of years later with some difficulty. And then I wrote another book, a sort of ghost story set in the world of Pre Raphaelite art, the art scene in London, and that was published too. And then I wrote Chocolat, and nobody wanted to publish it for a while, and then somebody took a chance on it, and it became more successful than anybody had expected it to. But
And
it took about 15 years for that to happen.
after that, you wrote Moonlight Market.
I've written about 20 books since Chocolat. The Moonlight Market was the last one that came out. It's a fairy story, it's a love story set in London. Very different from a lot of the things I've written have been different from each other. I've written things which are outright fantasy. I've written things that are partly fantasy, like Chocolat, but which are set in the real world. I've written things which are about myths, Norse myths particularly. I've written thrillers. I've written a whole lot of everything, short stories, plays.
And one of the reasons I love Moonlight Market is that I love walking around London. That was that's what I used to do all the time, just walk around London. I never knew where I was going. I just get off at a tube station and I'd start walking. And I'd always find a bookstore.
Ah,
When I came back from England, I had 3,000 books. I brought a 20-foot container of books, which I bought mostly in bookstores all around England, of course, but mostly around London, although I might have bought a book in Barnsley. I spent a lot of time in Barnsley. There's a wonderful pub there. What is it? The Mill and the Monk?
oh, the Mill of the Black Monks. So I remember that place. It's a rather lovely old building,
Yes.
rather gloomy.
Oh
Yes,
my
it is.
goodness. Very old.
A lot of the buildings are old there.
In the village where I lived in Berkshire, they had three pubs, a perfect village, three pubs, a sweet shop, and a butcher. And that's all we needed. That's it. That was it.
You know,
I
that's
was,
that's
it's near Reading School for boys. And all the little
yes.
boys would be there speaking Latin. And because I studied Latin for 4 years, I would talk to them, and they thought they're so funny. An American who could speak Latin.
That sounds wonderful.
You're a great inspiration also for fellow writers.
I hope so. I think you can't have been in this business for as long as I have without getting people asking you for advice. And I think generally I give advice out on social media, but I was also the chair of the Writers' Union, the Society of Authors in Britain, for some time. And so I got to know an awful lot about the legal proceedings that were important to writers. I got to know a lot about copyright, about contracts, about the way these things have inevitably evolved in the industry. And so young writers coming into it who may be a little overfaced, I think it's useful. And of course, we've got the internet now. We have easier lines of communication between each other. And so it's much easier to get in touch with somebody who knows and to ask them, can you have a look at this contract? Or just tell me if this sounds normal, or should I do this?
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a joy to talk to you. And the new book is Vianne. And this is your website, joanneharris.co.uk. People can go there. Now they can see your rose, which is fantastic.
They
So
can, yes. And there's lots of stuff. There's a reading group guide on the new book too, and various other things. If anybody wants any background or anything like that, it's all there. Thank
looking
you so
forward.
much, Patsy. It's been
Thank
such a
you.
joy to talk to you.
It's a joy to talk to you always. Thank you. Bye bye now.
My
Bye.
pleasure. Bye bye.